Hey everybody, thank you so much for your patience in waiting for us to return to the main feed. We are officially back. We've got tons of new episodes coming up for you in the new format. But if you've been jonesing to hear us talk about any cartoon related stuff over on our Patreon, Cartoons That Curse After Dark, we've been talking about tons of movies. We've talked about tons of franchises, popular ones people like. Tariq, which ones have we been talking about?
Shrek, Toy Story, Paddington, Ted, Kung Fu Panda. The list goes on and on.
Gumby 1 even. And
yeah.
look, some of our best stuff is on the Patreon. It's our worst kept secret or best kept secret. It's a well kept secret. You guys should go check out our stuff over there. It's really great. Patreon.com/cartoons that curse. If you want a little bit of extra stuff, we've got like 35 episodes over there. Go check it out and cue the theme song.
Word.
I've been watching them for years, it's always been something that fit with all the animated characters that's doing their own bits. With a fry who's in the future and a family guy that sucks. With a father from a Hilleberger family runs a month. The show inspires is the same guy except he totally say and diverse.
Let's watch cartoons that curse.
Yeah, that's bananas.
As rough.
What the f*** is up, everybody? Welcome to Cartoons That Curse. My name is Johnny. I am your co-host. I'm here with your other co-host, Toonrific Tariq. Tariq, how are you today?
I'm doing good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. I've had a good week in general. Just like busy, going well, hit the gym a few times.
Yeah.
Getting videos done. Yeah, doing great.
Oh, that's what I like to hear. I like that.
Hell yeah. We are here with our guest for the day. One of my favorite people, someone I've worked with a bunch, someone I've been friends with for years, someone who has influenced a lot of my interests, frankly. A lot of the stuff I've talked about in the podcast have been thanks to this guy, Hector Navarro.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Well, you're welcome for your personality and your interests and your success and failures. You're welcome. I'll take credit for everything.
The successes are me and the failures are you.
You know what I did not influence you on? I tried to prevent you from watching every Oscar-nominated movie, and you
did.
You threw that in my face. I tried to tell you, Johnny, this is a stupid idea. You're going to burn yourself out. This is dumb. There's no way you can be able to do it. And you defied me like a teenager, being like, "You don't know. You don't get me, Dad."
That was the first thing I told you how much. I think at that point I had maybe edited 45 minutes of the thing, and it was like only
2 years
9 movies or something. And you're like, you're never finishing this, dude.
Yeah.
Never gonna happen.
I was like, this is gonna be 5 hours, and you were like 5.5 or something. I was like, you're insane.
It ended up 6.25.
God, and I watched every minute, and I loved it.
Did you really?
Yeah, I think it's
you got 2 people in here.
I think it's your what's the phrase? Your not your masterpiece. I think it's your
magnum opus.
It's your magnum opus.
There you go.
You should retire.
Yeah.
You should quit YouTube.
Yeah.
You're done.
That's what everyone else is saying too. They said, "Stop it. Stop doing this."
We get it.
Yeah. Enough.
I'm really proud of how it turned out. And honestly, you lent me, I still have to bring them back, but you lent me a bunch of 3D Blu-rays because I was like, I want to watch some of these that I've seen before and some that I haven't in 3D.
Have you told people you're doing double duty and that you're going to also do a video about 3D movies? Have you told people that?
I've told some people that. I haven't told
not
everybody.
Publicly?
Not publicly.
Should we cut this out of the podcast, or are we going to leave it in?
Know.
Well, guess what? You dumb suckers, you viewers. Johnny's been 2-timing you. He's double timing. Oh, he had to watch Moana and Inside Out and all these 3D movies. Guess what? He saw them in 3D, so he's going to do a double video, double dipping. Smartest thing you could do.
It's true. And I still have a lot of 3D. I still have a lot to watch before I get that rolling, but I do really want to do that 3D video.
I'm glad.
Cuz basically I just want to talk about the state of 3D home media.
Yeah, it's not good.
It's not great, but also there's some things that are positive, like there with the Apple Vision Pro, there's just a little bit more interest in what I don't like the format. But
Sure,
they're at least doing things. They're at least doing 3D things again because of it. You know,
I was excited, and then I saw one YouTube video about the Apple Vision Pro, and I was like, oh, this is a piece of shit. This should not. They shouldn't have made this. Great.
Which video did you watch?
It's the most famous YouTuber. That one, that 40-minute video about. You can name him. I don't know him and his brother. You know.
Oh, Eddie.
Handsome. He looks like Shrek is a human. That guy.
Eddie.
Okay.
Eddie. I've actually hung out with Eddie a few times.
Yeah, he's good people.
Eddie's a cool guy. Yeah,
Cool
he's
guy.
a really good guy. That video is funny. It's funny because it just turns into an existential crisis.
Yes.
It's just like it starts with him being like, I want to try the Apple Vision Pro, and it ends with him being like, are we doomed?
That's what I feel like every time I think about how I like 3D movies. I always start the day with like, I like 3D movies, and I end the day with like, was this a terrible mistake? Did I ruin my life? Did I make the worst choices in my life? Is this stupid? Am I dumb?
Oh man. Well, Hector, we want to ask you a few questions. I know you and I have known each other for years. We met at Nerdist. We worked together at Nerdist on a show called Mothership. After that show ended, we eventually, we pitched a show together. We made a show called Animation Investigation, and they did it. They were like, yeah, this is good. Let's make this show.
Yeah. It was the best thing to come out of that building. Sorry, Critical Role. Our show was better. Sorry,
Kyle Hill. No, there's a lot of great people in that building, but that was truly some of the most fun I've ever had in my career, was making that show with you.
Yeah.
But we've talked a bit about it, but we haven't talked all that much about all the stuff you did before we met. Like, I know we've kept in touch since. I know you were a Nickturn. And like, tell me about getting that. How old were you when you became a Nickturn? What was it like being a Nickturn? Like, tell me about it.
I was third year into college because I did it my last year of college, and my college was only a 3-year program instead of a 4-year program. This was in 2009. I should say I graduated 2005, but then I went to a regular university in California for a year, and I didn't like it. And I basically tried to find a way out, and then I did. And this was this like animation school that was in San Diego that promised to like, we'll give you the skills and the tools you need, to maybe work in animation. And I've loved animation since I was a kid. And I was so excited to like pitch me as a person to like the recruitment person, be like, oh, this is who I am. And basically they're like, how do you have the money? Like, they didn't care. It was kind of a scam of a school. Right. It ended up, there was like lawsuits and stuff. And I don't know if my degree is still legit, but I'm pretending that it is.
Damn.
But I graduated, and I had a focus in storyboarding. And in the last year, there were great teachers there. There were great like teachers or professors or instructors or whatever who had industry experience. So they had connections. So one of the things I got to do in my third and final year of that school was get an internship in Burbank at Nickelodeon Animation in Burbank.
Amazing.
And I was living in San Diego at the time. So I was driving 3 hours in the morning by like twice a week to go to Nickelodeon to work there for 4 to 8 hours for free. Whoa. And then drive back.
Damn.
And
That's crazy.
It was some of the best times. It was awesome. Great people. I still occasionally like chat with some of the people that I worked for or like connected with when I was doing that internship. And then years later, so basically the short version of my life story is I did that, graduated, want to do this thing in animation, but in San Diego, there's not really an animation industry. So I ended up getting this post-production visual effects job. It was 3D movies. This is where the beginning of my bad decisions started. I was like, I'm all in on 3D. So I worked to make regular movies into 3D movies. I helped to convert them, and I spent 4 years of my life doing that at 2 different companies. And when you tell people that, they especially like LA people and LA movie people, they get real snobby and they go, oh, converted 3D? That's like bad, right? And I'm like, no. I'm like, some of the best 3D movies are converted because they had to be converted, because there's pluses and minuses to a movie that is shot natively in 3D versus shot regular and then converted afterwards.
Right.
But it's funny because when people talk about like, oh, well, Avatar was shot in 3D. I'm like, they went to Pandora? They went to Pandora with the cameras? That's a CG movie, my guy. That's animated.
Right.
That's CG movies also make some of the best 3D movies because The process involves going into the file and just adding a second digital camera, and that's how you get the 3D effect. And you can manipulate it, and you can. There's artistry involved in that, and there is artistry involved in shooting with a real 3D camera on a live action movie set. But my take is, whatever settings you have, you're locked into those settings. So the proof I always show is I show people the first Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movie, which was in 3D. And they shot it with 3D cameras on set. And like anything with Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone looks kind of like shallow in depth and kind of boring and kind of flat. Anything where Spidey's fighting the lizard and stuff looks awesome because it's a CG sequence. It's fully animated. And then the second Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movie was shot regular and then converted the whole thing in 3D. And it looks way better. It's super dynamic, even for the drama, even for like the emotional scenes and stuff like that. So anyway, did that for years, then got out of doing that. The job was basically moving to Canada. They were moving the entire, I was like, I don't want to live in Toronto. I want to stay in LA, which sucks. And a lot of visual effects industries have to deal with that. So I have a lot of sympathy and love and support for anybody working in visual effects. This is also around the same time that like Life of Pi was nominated for an Oscar for Best Visual Effects. And then that visual effects company like shut down. Like, that kind of BS of like, oh, there's like mismanagement and underbidding and, So anyway, got out of that and then started doing like web internet stuff. And then eventually was at Nerdist and then met Johnny. So that's my life story.
That's it. That's it. All right, we're done.
Tariq, has Johnny had you over to see a 3D movie? Has that happened yet?
Well, no, because Tariq lives in Philadelphia.
That's true. We did see, didn't we saw Spider-Verse at Mikey's house?
That's true. So he came to town. Do you remember, Hector, when I asked, I reached out to you and I was like, hey, Hector, do you know anyone who can get me into the Bob's Burgers movie, to a pre-screening of the Bob's Burgers movie? That was all thanks to Hector.
And again, my life is just here to help Johnny. I said, yes, I can. Yes, of course. I know.
Thank you for that. I never got the thank you, but thank you.
Hector just told the Nerdist people, it was like, who I've worked with before, it was like, hey, Johnny would be good for this. And so I got in a +1. Tariq flew out here, stayed with me for a few days. We went to Bob's Burgers. We recorded an episode. And then we watched and recorded commentary for Spider-Verse in 3D at Mikey's house. So he did watch a 3D movie with me.
That's true.
I would offer to bring them to you in Philly, but like I can't bring my TV. It's too cumbersome. So next time you come out to LA, we'll do some more 3D movies. So
okay.
Yeah. And I finally have a 3D TV now.
We can watch Shark Boy and Lava Girl. That's the one I remember. Stop. They tell you when to put the glasses on.
This call is over. That's it.
Rats. I ruined it.
No way. Jose.
I do like Robert Rodriguez's Alita Battle Angel in 3D. I think that
is actually pretty sick. That is
really good 3D. Yeah,
I don't love that movie, but that movie is fun to watch. So,
I like it. Yeah. I don't love it, but I like it. It feels
too.
like it feels like the beginning of an RPG to me. It's like it gives me Final Fantasy VII vibes in a lot of ways. I think it's cool. I think it's a cool movie.
It's cool. Okay. So we made plans, all three of us.
We've done it.
Great.
We figured it out.
There it is.
Although
Shark Boy and Lava Girl, you got it.
I don't think I've told you this, Hector, but I am planning to move, so we're gonna have to figure this out.
What?
I know.
To where?
Far away.
Oh man,
I'll be back. But you can come see me, and Tariq can come. We'll all come to my place. It'll be great.
Where are you moving? New Zealand? What's happening? That's great.
No, not that
close.
Far. I'm probably moving. I'm planning.
You don't have to say. Let me cut you off. You don't have to. This is a public podcast, and everything you say is law. So don't.
My social security number is
anything. No. All right. Cool. That's all. That's how you know it's a good friendship, is when your buddy drops this bomb on you during a podcast recording. Damn, dude. We haven't hung out. I don't know what's going on in your life.
I know.
Okay.
Hey, look, you've been in New Zealand hanging out with the Kiwis. All right. Okay, what was I going to say? Wait. Oh, I wanted to. Back to 3D movies though. The movie that you won me over on was Jurassic Park. You had me over with a bunch of people to watch Jurassic Park.
Oh, you told me about this before.
Yeah, and not only did it win me over, But then like I got Mikey, I kind of like started talking to Mikey about 3D movies because he has a projector that can do it. And he was like, well, I guess I'll just start downloading some 3D movies, trying it out. And then he became pretty into it. So he's got all these 3D movies. But I finally got this 3D TV recently. Got it all set up, decided to start having people over to watch some 3D movies. Friend of the podcast, Whitney Van Lanningham, who we've already done an episode in this format with, and her husband Brett, and they came over, and I was like, all right, I'm going to show you guys some cool stuff in 3D. We watched like the beginning of Coraline, which has some really good 3D.
Sweet.
We watched some parts of Spider-Verse, but they wanted to watch Jurassic Park, and I was like, perfect. Perfect. This is great. And we sat there, watched Jurassic Park, and they were totally 3D haters, fully won over. We're like, we're coming back over to do this again. We're doing it again. Yeah,
I love that.
It was great.
What cartoons did she pick? Whitney, what'd she pick?
Whitney chose. Did she just do 2, or did she do?
I think it was 2 because I remember there was the Harley Quinn.
Yeah, she chose the Harley Quinn Valentine's Day special, and she chose the latest Rick and Morty episode, like the season finale of season 7. Yeah,
wow, current.
It was a good 1-2 punch. Yeah,
I'm an overachiever. I picked 3. I'm an overachiever.
You did.
But no, it's okay.
Is he the only person to do all 3 so far?
Good. Yes. Other than like when we did our 50th episode, and you, me, and Mikey each brought one. So, but this is the first time we've done 3. We've given people the option 1 to 3. You chose 3. Yes, and and you know what you chose, and you also chose just the wildest trio, which we will get into. We will get into. Okay. I know. We have a few more things we want to talk about. I know.
All right, hurry it up, Johnny. I'm trying to get to the cartoons. Let's go.
We are talking about cartoons. Well, I know because I know both Tariq and I had. I know Tariq had heard of you prior to knowing that I was your homie, and then it was funny because I realized that I had listened to you on the Nick Animation podcast after we had met. It was once we had met, I was like, wait, oh, that was you.
Yeah.
It was very funny. Yeah. But I know, Tariq, you're a fan of that podcast, right? You've listened to that.
I am, because you were doing that back when like there was nothing else like it, really, like as far as like an animation podcast, interviewing people that like did the cartoons. Now anybody with a snowball mic just gets up in front of Zencastr and ask us what's your favorite episode you worked on.
Right.
But back then, like that was so rare, and I really appreciated it. You talked to a lot of like really dope people. My favorite thing. Well, first of all, I used to do retrospectives on cartoons, so those would help me a lot because you would interview the creators, and like I would get a lot of like behind the scenes info. Really helped me like close out my Wikipedia page when putting scripts together.
Yeah.
But I think my favorite that I remember you doing is when you talked to the guy that made Jimmy Neutron, because I never forgot that story where I think you asked him about Planet Sheen, and he was like, yeah, I didn't even like know they were doing that. Like, like nobody told me.
Yeah. Yeah, there were a few moments like that. I remember that I interviewed a cartoon creator, and then my buddy who's like a big fan of the whole cartoon. It wasn't Johnny. This was another friend of mine, because I hadn't seen it really. I'd seen some of this person's like earlier work. I hadn't seen their new thing that a lot of people loved. I hadn't had a chance to yet. My friend gave me a couple questions like, "Ooh, ask about this, and then I did. And this creator was like, "Yeah, I didn't work on those seasons. That the show kind of got away from me, and I didn't." And I was like, "Oh shit, I'm so sorry." Like there were a few moments like that. So it was always really interesting to try and like. And then you would hear about some cartoon show creators too being like jaded about the whole thing, or being like not necessarily in a super friendly place with Nickelodeon, because a lot of these show creators like had shows on Nickelodeon back in the day in the 90s or whatever. But what was interesting is I feel like the podcast, and first of all, thank you so much. It's always super nice to hear anybody say anything nice about that. I had a chance to go to the X-Men 97 like premiere night where they showed the first 3 episodes of X-Men 97 at the El Capitan Theater in LA. And when I was there, I met the voice actor who voices Gambit. Actually, I'd met him before because my girlfriend is a voice actor and she worked on a show with him, and he's really nice. And we geeked out about something before. We were geeking out about Star Wars and Indiana Jones because because AJ does some voice matches for Harrison Ford characters. He's been in like
word.
Lego Star Wars and stuff like that.
Nice.
So saw AJ again. He's the voice of Gambit, AJ Locasio. And then he goes, hey, I didn't realize it, but you hosted that podcast, and he loved that podcast. Like, again, like gave him all this info about the industry. And so I love hearing that. It's awesome. Full credit goes to like the production team behind the podcast because it was their idea, their access, their idea, like their pitches for like, here's who we should talk to. And I also think that the podcast may have even began or was a part of Nickelodeon, like current leadership or at the time leadership, mending some of those relationships with maybe some creators who like felt a little burned. You know what I mean? If you remember, like all these shows had like reboots or like movies on Netflix, and these shows came back or whatever. So
a couple years after,
it was really cool to kind of be in the midst of that and try to navigate. Like, hey, people love this show you did. Are you mad about the show?
Right,
or like,
yeah.
are you like? Like, you mad, bro? Are you mad? Like, are you happy? Like, you know, and I had some incredible memories doing that. I got to talk to heroes of mine, straight up heroes. So, that's great, man. I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, so no doubt. How did you end up even like doing that?
Not even related to anything at all, except that I did, improv in Los Angeles after I moved to LA. And while I was still doing some of that 3D work, I was doing it at a company here in LA in Burbank for 2 years, but then doing improv on the side, met people through improv, the LA improv community. Then one of those great and funny and talented people ends up writing stuff at a Nickelodeon show. They get wind that they're doing a podcast. So they have seen me do internet hosting stuff and interviewing, and they went, hey, my pal Hector would be great at that. So then they bring me in for an interview, and I was like, I was also an intern at Nickelodeon in 2009.
Right,
like,
yeah, exactly. I'm about to say this has nothing to do with the Nick Turn stuff.
Right. It didn't at all, but it was just from what I was doing. But then I got to like flex and go, I have a degree in animation.
Right.
I don't know if that's worth anything, but like, I'm not just a interviewer and like an improv person in LA who like likes cartoons. I'm like, I studied them and I love them, and I, you know, and I would love to do this research and talk to some of these people. So, so thankfully they went with me and then got to do it. And I could have kept doing that show forever. And I think they stopped it at the right time, but I was like, oh man, I could have kept going. But they basically were like, we ran out of people to talk to. They were like, we ran out of the sort of core like showrunners and creators, you know, for a large.
We don't have any more beef to squash.
Yeah.
We mended all our bridges.
We're cool.
We already storyboarding the Arnold movie. It doesn't even matter anymore.
Right. I was like, okay, all right, thanks. So that's how I ended up getting that.
That makes sense, because you guys did kind of like at one point, like it was just like the Recess guys and like stuff like that, where it's like you couldn't even play clips of the cartoon.
Right. We're talking to, they did a Cartoon Network thing or whatever. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. But the one real bummer that is it's heartbreaking for multiple reasons is that by that point I had also a little bit after working in 3D movies, I had worked at a voice acting agency in LA. And I like to tell people too, that is not how I met my girlfriend. Completely unrelated how I met my girlfriend, who she's a voice actor, seriously, completely unrelated. But at the time, for a year and a half, I worked at this office, and it was an acting agency for voice actors. One of their clients was the late, great Kevin Conroy. And I got the job because I was like, in my cover letter, I'm like, you guys rep Kevin. He is a hero of mine. I admire him so much. I love his work. I think he's an incredible actor. I hear his voice when I read Batman comic books. Like I grew up listening to him. You know, he's fantastic. And I got hired because they're like, oh, you actually watch cartoons. You're a nerd. You should work here. I'm like, yeah, it's helpful. So I worked there for a little bit. And while I was there, got to meet Kevin, work with him for a bit. I helped him at a convention one weekend when they needed help. And it's like treasured memories that I got to spend time with Kevin Conroy. And then years later, I'm doing the Nickelodeon thing. And this is how great Kevin is, by the way, too. It would be like years. I stopped working at that office. I started doing things for DC Comics and hosting stuff. And then at one point they brought in Kevin to do an interview thing, and he saw me and he was like, Hector. And I was just like,
oh, that's so
like,
good.
Amazing.
Incredible. He was so nice. The nicest
We also
man.
had him on Mothership that one time. He zoomed into Mothership that one time.
Yes,
which was,
and I think-
which was yeah.
It's wild. And I think he came in to do stuff in person.
Oh, for Talking Tunes,
for
probably?
Talking Tunes with Rob
Yeah.
Paulson and stuff like that. But before that, doing the Nickelodeon thing, my producer said, hey, we're trying to get Kevin and Mark Hamill to do an episode. And this was before the pandemic. So like to come into Nickelodeon studio and like you sit there and then you interview them for an hour. And I was like, I'm gonna die if that happens. And then it ended up scheduling. It ended up not working out. But I was like, that would have been the highlight of my life. Then I would have quit everything. So I don't know. Yeah.
I just remember when we had him on Mothership, he zoomed in, which, you know, like, and he's an older guy at that point.
Yeah.
Not necessarily technologically savvy. And so like, I remember our other producer, Luke, great guy, is like sitting there talking to Kevin, trying to teach him how to like plug his microphone in and get
Love
the
it.
settings properly for the Zoom setting.
And it's Bruce Wayne. Like, how do I set up the computer?
Exactly.
And you're like, Bruce, you should know.
Yeah. I just remember Luke gets off a call with Batman and just like throws his headphones down. He's like, God damn it. It was great. That was a fun segment though.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. And then like, so we worked together at Nerdist. After that, like we all kind of went different places. You mostly were at DC Daily. You were at DC Daily for a while, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was working across the street actually at a different company.
That's right.
At Caffeine.
That's right.
Yeah. We
That's right.
ran into each other. I think I ran into you. I think I texted you because you guys were having that there's like some outdoor hang thing where they just brought in all the Batmobiles. So I just got to come outside and look at the Batmobiles. That was pretty cool. It's like,
and now you're moving to Norway or whatever. You're going to miss out, Johnny. What are you doing? Oh man.
No, I'm actually moving to Gotham, so I'll be able to see those Batmobiles
in New Jersey. Great.
Yeah. Man, you know I saw the trailer for the second Joker. And they did it again. They filmed it. They filmed the first one where I grew up, and they filmed the second one where I grew up. I recognized every block. Those streets do not connect. I was so upset.
Yeah.
I was in college. I was in college, and my friends were sending me videos and pictures of the Batmobile in front of Foot Locker, and I'm like, "What the fuck is going on in North New Jersey?"
Oh my god!
Wait, why was the Batmobile in front of Foot Locker?
Yeah, they didn't.
Yeah, what was it for? Because there's no Batmobile in Joker.
Well, yeah, okay. It was some kind of. It was
like the
car.
Gotham Police or something.
Yeah,
it was
something.
probably
Yeah,
I think you just tried to avoid. I think you're trying to take back a huge spoiler.
That's true. Yeah,
they probably Joker 2.
The film Joker 2 is the.
I'm sure it's going to make the most sense, and it will be a really good story point.
They're gonna kick the door down.
That's great.
Definitely. It's definitely a recognizable Joker in that movie.
Yeah.
I just love Tariq sitting in theaters and his buddy next to him's like, man, this movie's so dumb. It's not doing anything. And Tariq's like, yeah, and the streets don't even connect at all.
That is literally what happened. I was like, that is down the block. That's over there.
Dude, if you lived in LA, movies would be ruined for you.
I know. That's what it made me think about. It made me think about, like, I'm like, how would I feel if like, or like Georgia, like so many movies are filmed in Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't even imagine what it's like growing up and being this is what this is doing in my brain.
Tariq, that reminds me of a story my uncle had once. My uncle works in Chicago where they were shooting the first two Nolan Batman movies. I can't remember which one it was during. I think it was Batman Begins. But my uncle, Frank, he walked out of his office and there's just like a huge group of cops standing there. And they're just like out in the street, and he's just like, what the hell's going on? He walks up and he's like, guys, what's going on? Realizes that all their badges say Gotham Police. They're just all extras for the movie.
That's great.
Those movies disrupt the peace. Yeah. They do. Nobody knows what's going on.
So Hector, right now, mostly you got Heroes Reforged with your buddies, Adam and oh my gosh. What's your other friend's
Augustine.
name? Augustine, who I've only met one time in a movie. Yeah, Augustine.
And now you're moving to Germany, so we're never gonna hang out
No,
again.
we're all gonna. I'll be back. I'm gonna be back and
Okay.
forth. We'll hang out a bunch.
Okay,
I got
great.
too many friends here, and also you will come visit me.
Thank you. Of course I will. I'm mostly unemployed, is what you're asking. That's the answer? Is I'm mostly unemployed. I do freelance things here and there I just did a thing for Nerdist again, and then I do stuff for new rock stars occasionally.
Nice.
But I mostly am, working on some other side projects to potentially, possibly get me gigs and get me hired. I am working on a writing project I'm very excited about because I've never really done that before, so that's cool.
Nice.
And I'm also helping my lovely girlfriend with when she does convention appearances and signings and stuff. I'm so happy to go and be able to help her and be the security because I'm super tall and tough and badass. So it's great.
Yeah.
I'm not Tariq. I'm short. I'm not.
But they don't know that. That's what I'm saying.
We're trying to maintain the illusion.
Yeah, you know.
Got it.
Yeah. Shout out to Abby. Hector's girlfriend.
Yes.
Abby is great. We got to have Abby on the podcast. Honestly, we got to
Sure.
ask her on.
That'd be great. She's got great taste in cartoons, and especially has that great background in like being an anime fan that I didn't really grow up having, other than occasionally, other than the biggies like Dragon Ball Z and that kind of thing. But like,
Sure.
Yeah, she's got some favorite animes as well, so that could be cool.
That's got to be so cool to grow up loving anime and now be the voice in so many big animes.
Yeah, I can't
That's
even
crazy.
imagine.
Yes. And there's even been some instances where they will like bring back a classic anime or do something like that, and she's like, "Oh, I get to," It's the same with Jurassic Park, dude. You mentioned 3D Jurassic Park earlier.
Yeah.
That movie, the original movie that came out, like affected me deeply because I think I was too young to see it. I know I was too young. But then 20 some years later, I was one of the many, many people who worked on that movie to convert it into 3D to do the 3D version. So that was some of my work in there. And it was like a full circle moment to be able to be like, this is one of the reasons I love movies. And then I got to work on that movie. I'm not even talking, I got to work on a Jurassic World movie. No, I did the original.
The good one. The one that is still great.
Although, it's a hot take. I'll go to bat for what is it?
JP3?
World? No, Fallen Kingdom.
I'll
go to bat for that one a little bit.
I still actually haven't seen it. After Jurassic World, I was like,
What? Dude, it's the one where there's a volcano on the island and they're all running
I remember
from the volcano.
Yeah,
it's great.
I remember.
It's great.
Yeah. All right. So, maybe we should probably get into these episodes. I think that was a good, solid rundown of your whole life. Hector.
Yeah.
All of it.
Yeah.
And then we'll have you back on once you've lived a little bit more life, and we can go over that part.
Sounds good.
Okay. So the three things that Hector chose, possibly. It's definitely the strangest trio of episodes we've had to do. But these were fun, cool picks, but very different than what we normally talk about on the pod, which I think is going to make it fun. So in the order you wanted to go in, the first one you chose is a pilot that aired on Adult Swim that did not get any more episodes, made by Aaron Springer, called Corgoth of Barbaria.
That's right.
This... I think you had told me about this when we worked together at
But
Nerdist,
you had not seen it?
I think I had watched some of it, but I think this is the first time I really remembered watching through the whole thing.
Wow. Tariq, had you seen it before? Had you seen it before?
Tariq, had you?
No, I've just heard about it. I've always heard about it, but I've never seen it until now. Yeah, you got him, bro.
Got him. Got these two fools. All right.
Yeah, you got him.
Hector, why did you choose Corgoth of Barbaria? What about this made you want to talk about it?
Lots of reasons. Number one, I do love Conan the Barbarian. I do love that genre. And I think that people tend to look down on it, which is fine, but I don't think people know that much about, I don't think people have engaged that much with it. This is a parody of that though. Right. But it's I pick it because I also love this cartoon. I think it's really crude and it's really fucked up and it's really funny. And it also feels like it's a precursor to what we'll see later. It also feels like it's a little bit of these guys trying to work this out and be like, maybe we want to do something like this, but then it didn't quite hit. it feels a little half cooked, like it's not all the way there. But
Sure.
I also love telling people about this and sharing it, and it makes me love it because I feel like not enough people know that it exists, or not enough people have seen it, right? So when I
Right.
say, oh, and also for me in my memory, years after this aired in 2006, which I can't confirm, but I swear I was like staying up late and just happened to be watching Adult Swim, you know what I mean, when this aired, and I saw it, and it was like this mythical thing that I could never know
Find
about
again.
or
Yeah.
find again. And I mean, this is still internet it did exist in 2006, but not like it does today, where it's like the Wikipedia page is like, oh, this is exactly what it is, and laying out,
Right.
you know, then it aired at Comic-Con, and then it aired on this day, and then it, you know, so I've always felt like it's almost like lost media a little bit, where I'm like, oh, you got to remember this thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I just like this genre. I just like sitting in a weird like D&D tavern, and like, you know, there's like these big gross men that like piss and like, you know, get real gross violent, and this just feels kind of like a pure cartoon, where these cartoon people that made this were really pushing like, okay, so we know this guy's going to come up to Korgoth and say some stuff to him. What's Korgoth going to say to him? And then he like rips his skin off of his body.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
That
Like-
there were so many moments
Great,
like that
dude.
where I was just like,
Yeah.
Good. So, yeah.
I also like that this is like you said, it's like I got the D&D thing, but it's like this really weird world where it's medieval and prehistoric, but it takes place later in the timeline, right? So
Yes.
it's like there's also all of these modern aspects, like the tavern has a jukebox, and like there's
Right.
just like houses and like and
Yeah.
so it's a really bizarre combination of things in that way, and I thought that was really interesting.
I love that idea. Just last night, I just started watching the new Fallout show, and it's like the same thing. It's like, oh yeah, it's like post-apocalyptic. So you get these weird little touches of like, oh, LAX survived intact. Look at that. But none of the buildings around LAX survived at all. They're all completely gone. But the iconic like LAX airport still survived. It also, I think it's an homage or a ripoff of Thundar the Barbarian. Do you guys remember that old cartoon show?
Yeah, that's
from
a
the
Hanna-Barbera,
80s?
right? Yeah.
It is. And it's also, it's like a kid version of Conan, or like He-Man. It's like a Hanna-Barbera version of He-Man.
Right.
And the thing I remember the most about that show is that opening title, where it is like a very serious voiceover, that it's like, after the Great Wars, there were people roving, but magic came back. And it's this really intense opening. And I remember the Chewbacca type character like lifted a Volkswagen Bug and then threw the car. So I was like, oh, this is like in a world past cities, but there's now magic and sorcery, which I think is super fun.
Yeah.
And if the Korgoth show were to keep going, I'm sure that they could have. It just opens it up to like more possibility of stuff you could do in your story.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I love
Totally.
about Conan the Barbarian stories, is that they are this fictional prehistory where there's magic. So you can kind of do a little of every. You can do a story where a dinosaur will appear in Conan the Barbarian, and it doesn't feel out of place, because it's just like, this sorcerer brought forth this creature from ancient time, or what. Like, it's just like, it doesn't. You could do whatever you want, basically. So
Right.
yeah, really cool.
For sure. Yeah. I one of the things I love about this is like it looks like it's from earlier than it was to me. Like when I look at this animation, I'm like, oh, this doesn't look like 2006 animation to me, like in a good way. Like,
No, I
where I'm
feel
like,
like-
it looks like it's from a different era almost.
Probably like five to 10 years before it.
Yeah,
almost.
exactly.
So,
Exactly. But man, those backgrounds are incredible.
Yeah.
I like the character models are very like intentionally kind of gross and off-putting. But
Yes.
but the animation is really great. I think it looked really
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
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 I think the cool thing that I was picking is, like you said, it's like it is like a cartoon, and like what I mean by that is like it's like silly and like it breaks physics, but it's still like brutal and rough and
Yeah.
raunchy as fuck, and like you hear people that like you recognize, like these still like Tom Kent, like these cartoony voices still
Yep.
coming out of like these like real dudes.
Yep.
Like it's like this like meshing pot that I haven't really seen
Yes.
before. You either kind of go all the way one way or all the way the other way, and this one just kind of goes in the middle. I think that's real cool.
This was a few years before Diedrich Bader was going to be Batman, another one of my favorite Batmans in Batman: The Brave and the Bold, and he's Korgoth, and he has that great voice, like it's Diedrich Bader.
That's
so
who that
again,
is.
there's so
Okay,
many
yeah.
elements of like, oh, it's almost like to this polished thing that I know comes later. Because it's all these really talented people that put this together. And the cartoony bits are great, like the bit where they have exploding apples, and then the one guy's like, nah, and then he eats it, and then immediately explodes. Like,
that guy's
so
gone.
funny. So funny.
Poor guy.
That is, and the fact that it is like a pure comedy, even though it is built in this like kind of crazy sort of lore driven world. It is a parody of these other things, but it is like in its tone, it's mostly comedy. It's like a crude, raunchy ass comedy.
His intro was like pissing in a can.
Yes.
And then when they look at him, he like when he's about to finish peeing, he like clenches his ass cheeks.
Yes.
It's the funniest thing ever.
I wrote that down also. I cannot believe they animated
I also wrote that down. Those are in my notes as well.
It's
Clenching his ass cheeks. It's great.
Good.
The comedy mixed with the weird sorcery of these kinds of stories, like Specules, the sorcerer, gets killed, but then not really, because then he takes over the body of the poor decapitated woman. But then at the end, flies away with the woman's body, and it looks so cheesy.
It goes up and it like goes to the side a little bit. But I wrote so down.
Funny.
I said, damn, he had to blow her head up, because at that point I was like, shit.
Yeah. And that was like the first. That was like one of the second line of dialogue she had in the whole episode.
Yeah.
She saved the day and died.
Yeah. She said, "Korgoth, have you ever done it in someone else's kitchen?" And then they die. Yeah, and like all the women in this show are all objectified. They're just like sexual objects. They're drawn very exaggeratedly, the way that like all the men are all disgusting except for Korgoth, and he's kind of disgusting, but he's like this big Conan, buff guy.
Right.
But I thought that was a very, very funny, crude thing that they were doing. That like, I wonder if they would have kept it going had the show kept going. For example, with the final season of Samurai Jack, Genndy Tartakovsky, who's the director of Korgoth, right? He directed the animation
director, right? Yeah.
The short or the pilot episode was directed and written by Aaron Springer, who did SpongeBob, and now he's known for doing the new Mickey Mouse stuff. Those
things are great.
Great. So these are all like at the top of their game animators. That final season of Samurai Jack, I don't know if Genndy looked at the Samurai Jack show before he brought it back and was like, hey, the thing we're missing in this is like a woman character that's, so like the final season of Samurai Jack, they bring in this really interesting woman character who I think is the attempt at like trying to balance out the perspectives and to bring in a new perspective and to tell a really compelling story. Would Korgoth have gone that way? I don't know. Would they have kept it so that every single episode there'd be objectified women who just get their heads blown off at the end?
Right.
I don't know, because that is also kind of Conan.
Yeah, that's like, it feels like that was the parody aspect,
the parody.
right?
Yes,
yeah.
for sure. But still really funny moments with like that woman was chained up to a tree and the guys are being creepy, and then the tree turns around and eats them. And you're like,
dude,
what the hell? Why was she chained to the tree? Was that the tree doesn't matter? It's so
it's
funny.
just the world.
Yeah.
All women are in peril in this world.
Exactly. Exactly. It's true.
And then like even just when they bang it out, like the animation on the bush just going like squat.
It's so funny.
It's so funny.
Yep.
Oh, it's great. And then even like that, the gum monster, so weird. Like,
really cool.
It's really cool. It can change into all these different things because it's gum. But like when he pulls out gum and just chews gum, I'm like, what is happening?
Right.
What is this?
Yeah. Around the middle, it kind of turns into nonsense a little bit. Like when all that stuff starts happening.
Yeah, and I like that. Just like the first thing that happens is the gum just punches him. Like the gum before it even turns into anything, it's just bam. Yeah.
Again, it's just unhinged cartoon shit, man. I have in my notes too that Specules, the sorcerer, he calls Korgoth a ragamuffin. I thought that was really funny. So I wrote that down. Like, he's such a weird old man. You have managed to arouse me. Arouse my ire. What he says.
You know what? My biggest laugh from him was when he's like got the statue and he's like threatening him. He's like, don't do anything with my statue. And he pushes the button and it starts dancing. And then he starts dancing also. Yeah. He just starts dancing with the statue.
Like, post the end of the world, the most like coveted item is just this like big mouth Billy Bass like toy thing. It's so stupid. It's great.
Exactly. It's great.
Anyway,
man.
Great show. Great pick, Hector. You're great. Thanks.
Yes. Hey.
Yeah. Took the words right out of my mouth.
That's my line. Jesus.
Yeah, right.
That was great. So glad we did that. I assume you chose partially the reason you chose this next one is like this evolution from this into Primal. Is that part of the reason you did this? So the Primal pilot, which I had seen before, but I have not watched through Primal. I've only seen a couple episodes. And I kind of forgot how fucking brutal this pilot is.
We went through the same thing because I know I've seen this pilot before, but like watching it again, I was like, oh, this shit is like rough.
Yeah, dude, it upset me.
Yeah, it's just a story of like a tortured man.
Oh, it's so sad. Okay, so Hector, why did you put us through this? I'm just kidding. I know it's great. But
exactly, that's why. Well, I picked the three that I have. I didn't realize it, but I did put them in like air date order. This aired next in 2019. Korgoth was 2006, but I think that the evolution is really interesting because Genndy Tartakovsky, who created Primal, he wrote and storyboarded and did the story for this first pilot episode. He said that like he was kicking around this idea, but he didn't quite love it in the past. But then as he kept looking into the things that people really responded to with his work, that he started to kind of lean into it. And the other thing I love about Primal is that the two lead characters are named Spear and Fang. And this is another item of proof that shows that Genndy Tartakovsky loves the Conan the Barbarian work and was influenced by Conan the Barbarian because the writer of Conan, the creator, Robert E. Howard, the first story he ever wrote when he was like 13 or something was called Spear and Fang. And it was about two Neanderthal characters, like these caveman characters. And I have a copy of it because I think it's in the public domain. So there's this little pamphlet. It's a short story. And I got a copy of it and I read it and I think it's pretty good. And this is not the same as Primal at all, but just the name Spear and Fang to have Genndy Tartakovsky look at the kind of work of Conan the Barbarian, look at the author, see the influences, see what kind of work it is. And that little short story is also a little bit brutal. He uses that little influence and it's a little nod, but I didn't realize it until rewatching this for this podcast is that the first thing you see from Spear is literally the spear into the fish. And the first thing you see from Fang, unless you count the shadow of her in the background in the trees in the jungle, is her using her fangs on the fish. So these are these characters at their core, and you see them doing something where they're trying to feed their families. And the writing in this is really smart, even though it feels invisible, like there is no writing. The character work is really smart, and I think it's because like I'm realizing it now that Genndy knows that like the animation, coupled with the effects and the music and the backgrounds and the everything, is going to help sell the story. So it's one of the most emotional and like gut-wrenching things I've ever seen in my life is this first episode of Primal. The whole 2 seasons of the show is like this. It just goes so fucking hard. It goes so fucking, the opening where he's fishing and then the gator comes out and then it just cuts to Primal. You're like, what am I about to, this thing grabs you by the balls or the ovaries and says, you're not gonna you have no choice but to be invested in this.
Yep.
And all of my notes while rewatching this are just like, fuck, that was rough, man.
That is
like,
that is
everything is
all
just
of my
like,
notes.
dude, this shit's crazy, dude. Brutal. What the fuck?
My last note is, man, what the fuck? This show is so sad.
Yeah, it is. But it's also like, here's the thing. This is what I love about this show too. And it's kind of true for the whole show. And I do want you I demand that you two watch these 2 seasons, because I think that I'm having the same conversation with with my friends and with my girlfriend right now, because we've finished watching like Invincible, for example, and people compare Invincible to The Boys, and I think Invincible so far has done a better job of, it still gives you these little moments of hope.
Yeah.
You know, The Boys is so cynical. It's bleak. It's like Game of Thrones. You get to a point where you're like, dude, no one is going to win. No one is redeemable. Oh my God. But Invincible gives you a little taste of it. And this show, as sad as this show is, and I could honestly, I'm sitting here analytically watching this and taking notes for you guys. But if I were by myself, if this was a dark room, this was at night, you know, I had a glass of wine and I rewatched this show Primal, this first episode would make me cry. Because it is powerful. But the beauty of it is even with all that fucked upness, the moment where Spear doesn't decide to jump and just sits there.
Yep.
Like,
that's when I was all in.
It's like no dialogue. It's
good.
all emotion, and it's all background, and it's all silhouette, and Genndy knows what he's doing, and the hair whipping and, you know, the silhouette, and him looking at the sun and seeing his family. And then you realize like, and then like the sun's kind of up in the sky. So he was really standing there maybe for like hours,
right,
watching this, you know, just processing this. And at the end, again, as sad as it is, Fang loses her 2 children.
Yeah. Oh my God, dude.
As sad as that is, like, I was like, because, you know, the little babies, raptors, I remember the first time I saw this, the little baby raptors or T-Rexes are like with Spear, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be his new family.
Yep.
Nope.
Yep. That's what I was hoping for.
The show is...
They rip it right from you instantly.
Literally. And it's about these 2 grieving parents. But the fact that the final shot of the show is Fang just kind of like, hey, we need to be together. I'm sticking with you, guy, because you helped my kids when you could, and you tried to protect us. And him looking at her, and then kind of like smiling and making the choice. And then the last shot is just him riding her as it cuts to directed by Genndy Tartakovsky. You're just like, fuck, dude.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good.
Epic.
It's excellent. I know I'd seen this before, but this is the first time where I don't know. I think I maybe put this on too late at night previously, where I was just like too tired to properly really like give it the attention it deserved.
You got to watch this at 10 in the morning, and then you're jacked to the rest of the day.
That's
literally what I just did. That's what I just did.
Oh man, it is beautiful. Also, the animation is just so good.
It is.
It's
really it's great. It's great. Like you already. I mean, anybody that like loves cartoons knows Gendy's pen, and they know that he's just ridiculous. The more he does, you look at the Hotel Transylvania's, those things are relentlessly expressive, so much like shape, and like it's just, it's a different kind of understanding of like what makes animation. And like you look at this, and it's just like the blocking, the cinematography, it's otherworldly. Like it's half of it I can't even like understand. Like, you look at the storyboard credit and it's just him, and it's like, how the fuck? Like, what
and
is
you know
this?
what's so interesting is like, I mean, and because there is no dialogue, like you have to be that intentional with every single aspect to tell the story. And you know what? It's funny. I almost feel like, because he did this show, and then he did Samurai Jack, which has dialogue but a lot less than like most shows. And then he just recently did that show Unicorn Warriors Eternal, which I watched the first couple, and I liked the first couple, but I've heard that it kind of falls off. People are like not as stoked on it as it goes. And I'm kind of like, was he in the dialogueless world for so long that like he's now struggling to reacclimate like to the stuff where it's like very much dialogue heavy? That show still looks incredible, and I need to finish it and give it my own thoughts. But I don't know. It's just interesting that was not received as well, even though it's his immediate follow-up to Primal, which is like beloved across the board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I wonder if it's just because Primal is just like Tariq was saying, it's otherworldly. Like
Right.
it feels so distilled and so pure. It feels like you're snorting cocaine when you watch this show. and I do not mean this with any exaggeration. This is not hyperbole at all. I truly believe Primal is the best ever like pinnacle of United States Western television animation. I cannot think of a cartoon show made by a studio in the United States that is better animated and moves better than this show. Like this is art. Like I cannot.
I'm not going to argue.
Yeah. So it's like when you go from that to what the follow up is, it's the same with Craig McCracken's show. I think that was on Netflix. Coming
Kid
off
Cosmic.
Okay, Cosmic.
That was a
Kid
good
Cosmic.
show.
That was
really
I love
cool.
that shit.
Yeah.
Really, really cool. But it's like, is it as pure of an idea as the Powerpuff Girls? I don't know.
Right.
Maybe not. Maybe it's tough. It's
Yeah, and it does
these
feel
guys
like-
have just done such beloved work. It's difficult
Yes.
to yeah.
And the longer time goes on and the more media that's been made, the harder it is just to come up with something that's just a really easily distilled pure
Right.
idea like Primal
Right.
is. And
Right.
like even Unicorn Warriors Eternal, it has crazy lore. I liked what I've seen of it, but it has this insane backstory kind of lore that requires so much exposition, and he does a great job conveying it, but like it's very, it's harder to just come up like, Powerpuff Girls is 3 little girls fight crime. Like that is about it.
Yeah, they explain it in like the first 20 seconds of every episode, and that's all you need is sugar, spice, everything nice.
That's it. Or Craig McCracken's other big show after that was Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. It's like the title is the premise. It's very, very simple. It's interesting. Maybe Genndy was in this world of Primal that had no lore for such a long time that he came out of it and he's like all this stuff for the new show. I don't know. Although to be fair, Primal actually does have a lot of lore and it's super cool and it's really fucked up. I don't know if you guys
excited to watch
in your first attempt, if you got to the zombie dinosaurs episode. Holy shit, it's fucked up.
That sounds nuts. Whatever that is.
Awesome. So all right, so you guys have to watch the rest of Primal. That's the lesson.
Hell yeah.
Here.
Okay.
And this is a fun one to talk about too, because we are generally like what we started and founded this podcast on was the more sitcom-y adult animation, The Simpsons, The King of the Hills, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, fuck that shit, dude. I'm all about the hardcore. That shit's for babies, dude. If your show doesn't have a dinosaur getting stabbed in the brain and blood filling up the eyeball, it's for fucking babies, dude. You might as well be watching DreamWorks Boss Baby, Johnny.
I did have to watch that for my Oscar video.
Yeah, I know. Just kidding, because my next pick is exactly that. It's exactly what you just said.
I'm about to say
I'm glad we got to talk about something like this though, and it does make me really want to watch through the rest of Primal. And I feel like this isn't something that's as far up your alley, Tariq. I feel like this wouldn't be like, you're not a big like action oriented guy, but you seem to have really liked this. I loved it. It's really just as somebody that like just appreciates just like great visual storytelling. Like even like me and Johnny, like our favorite cartoons, BoJack, and we always talk about how much we love the episode where they don't speak. Yeah,
and it's because of just like that attention to like visual storytelling. When it's done right, it's like it's undescribable. And like watching this, like I didn't check the runtime. I just was like locked in. I was like, what the fuck is gonna happen?
Yeah,
it's so good. It's really good.
Hell yeah. Well, damn. Maybe we'll have to.
Nice.
Watch through it. Maybe we'll watch through it and text each other.
All right. There you go.
Get a Primal group chat.
Hell yeah. Let's do it.
Me and Johnny marathoning it.
I like that.
All right.
I like that. I approve.
This last episode you chose, I was really glad you chose this. Because we're both, he chose an episode of Star Trek Lower Decks from the end of season 1. Hector and I are both Trek fans, although I go through binge periods of Trek where I'm like, all right, I'm all in, I'm watching a bunch of Trek. And then when I fall off, I'm kind of like, okay, I'm just going to wait until I'm in that mode again. And then I'm going to binge the stuff that I've missed. So, you know, like right now I have like a season and a half of Discovery to watch. I have most of Strange New Worlds to watch. And I've honestly only watched season 1 of Lower Decks. And I just finally and I liked it when it came out, but I just recently, me and my brother were watching it and I was like, oh, I love this. I need to watch through the rest of this. And actually,
Johnny,
amazingly, this was the episode I was on next.
Oh, sick.
Once again, Hector deciding all your life choices here, all your life decisions. I appreciate that preamble, Johnny, but I also don't give a shit what you think because I know you like Star Trek. I want to know what Tariq thinks because
I know.
I picked this
I do too.
I picked this for multiple reasons. Number one, I love this show. Number two, you know, this is Cartoons That Curse. This is like an adult sitcom. And I think that this is a show that, for me at least, I would put in the same conversation as a Simpsons, South Park, Family Guy. You know, I like that there's a show that can be like that, or like more like Rick and Morty there, but it still has one foot in a very sincere Star Trek world.
Yes.
And I also picked it because, well, I didn't know, but it's next in the air date. This debuts in 2020. And I also picked it because it is chronologically next in the timeline. We have spent time in prehistory. Now we're in the future.
Oh, that's good.
Now we're in the opposite timeline. But
that's good.
I also picked it because I know, Tariq, you are not a Star Trek fan. You have not seen any Star Trek really,
No,
right?
This is the first Star Trek thing I've ever seen, unless you count that episode of Futurama. Where they're all there,
which I do,
and also you've seen like the Family Guys that bring in the cast at least.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
So you've got you got some adjacent. Have you never watched Orville? Because I know you're a Seth guy.
I've seen I think 1 or 2 episomes of the
Hector's an Orville hater. I think Orville's pretty fun. I think Orville's pretty fun.
Don't do it. Don't do Orville. Don't do Orville. I'm a hater. So, Tariq, what did you think of this as being like you're sitting down and you're watching Star Trek? What did you think?
I liked it. I thought it was good. I admittedly was a little lost at first, but I think once I realized like what they were doing with the which I thought was just like cool in general, because I knew what kind of cartoon this was. I knew it was kind of like a sitcom-y thing to
Rick
a
and
certain
Morty
degree. Yeah. But when I saw that they were like really going for this like out there concept, that half of the episode is like a movie. It's in like it's like Letterboxd, and like I was like, oh, this is like cool. And then like especially like with the main character and like her mom, they do like this real cool thematic stuff where she's like fighting emotions that she like is trying to like compartmentalize, and like they're like coming out towards her. I was like, oh, this is like thoughtful, and like it's really, the only issue I had was that I didn't like how the characters looked, but I love how it's animated. I love the backgrounds, the CG. Every time they showed a ship, I was like, what is this? Like, why does this look so good?
Awesome.
I thought it was good. Such a funny and fun episode for you to choose, Hector, because I think I think in some ways it was the perfect episode to choose for Tariq. And in some ways it was the exact wrong episode because there's so much this show in general is so much better if you know a lot about Star Trek. Yes. And this one in particular, not only having all of the little things about the world of Star Trek that you need to know, but then this is also playing on the tropes of what happened in the movies because it's doing the whole way those movies take place.
Tariq was saying like, why does the ship look so good? Here's the thing. Here's what happened.
Okay.
Star Trek was a show in the 60s. And it really found most of its success after it was canceled 3 seasons and then lived in reruns throughout the 70s. So in like the early 70s, it was a huge hit in reruns, so much so that they brought it back for an animated show, Star Trek, in like 1974. Most of the actors came back, like William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy, to voice their characters, but it was very limited animation. It's where all those like memes and GIFs come from, where like Captain Kirk is like, like that's where that show came from. But with the success of Star Wars, movie studio Paramount was like, shit, what do we have that could compete with? Wait a minute, we own Star Trek. Let's make them do a Star Trek movie to compete with Star Wars. And they did. And that movie came out 2 years later in 1979 called Star Trek: The Motion Picture. The posters were like, accept no substitute, as though they were trying to tell people like Star Wars is bad. And, you know, we're the originators.
Right.
Meanwhile, the movie they came out with was super boring. And not a bad movie. Good, I think a good movie.
I've kind of
but
become a fan. I used to really dislike it, and I've kind of grown to, especially the visual effects in that movie are so out of this fucking world insane that like the last time I watched it, I was just mesmerized by it visually. Yeah.
They were trying to do the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey versus like an action-y, you know, space movie. And they did some of it. But one of the things they did in that movie and then in the sequel, Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, is that they would have the characters in that little shuttle come up to the ship, and because it was a movie budget, not a TV show budget, where they had like a little plastic ship on a string, they really like spent time around these like miniatures and like the lighting and then effects, and you hear the music swelling. Dun, 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 and they would spend like 6 minutes like just circling the ship. So
it's
that's
a
what they did in
ridiculously
this
long
episode.
sequence in that first movie, and it was also the first instance of what would become the Next Generation theme song, right? That's the first time you hear it. And
Johnny,
so,
you're getting too much in the weeds for Tariq here.
No,
he doesn't care about that. That's too
important.
I will say this is it. When I saw the theme song to this, I was like, "Oh, this is a bold choice for a cartoon in 2020." It makes sense, okay, because it's playing
based
off
on those old shows. Yeah,
okay, that makes sense.
It's set in around that same time period. So some of those characters from those shows may pop in and out. And the opening sort of title card.
She does say it's the 80s in this, which I was. So is it? It's that 80s. I was like, which 80s? Because there's a Futurama joke where they say play a song from the 80s.
22 80s, 21 80s or something.
23 80s.
23 80s.
Yeah.
See, that's why I was because you know that Futurama joke where Zach Brannigan's like play the song from the 80s and Kip's like, which 80s?
Which 80s? Perfect.
So the other reason I picked this is because I do think that it is a great example of what the Star Trek Lower Decks show is. Because Tariq, you were mentioning that it's Mariner and her mother. It's her going through therapy. It's her working that stuff out. To me, it's like the good episode of Rick and Morty where there's some therapy involved. Like that's part of what that show is about. And it's so at the core of this show, they are still focusing on these main characters, right? With Mariner and Boimler and Tendi and Rutherford and what they go through, but it's still in the backdrop of the zany, fun Star Trek stuff. But I also like how they're trying to, like Johnny was saying, play on the tropes of the Star Trek movies. So here's my hope, Tariq, is that now you can watch the first J.J. Abrams movie from Star Trek that came out in 2009 and be like, oh, okay, I get this. All these lens flares. This is what that Lower Decks episode was making fun of, you know, things like that. Or you get to an episode, or you could basically start watching the Star Trek movies by themselves, because that's kind of what I did. And you get to a Star Trek movie where like, oh, the ship is being destroyed. Okay, that's what they were making fun of. You know, you can kind of recognize that stuff. But hopefully this intrigued you enough that you would want to watch Lower Decks is the most important thing. But secondly, also, like, you're like, maybe I'll watch some of these old Star Trek shows and maybe you will enjoy them, but maybe not. But maybe you could just, I love Lower Decks because it has that nice new shininess to it that I think helps my imagination if I do go watch a rerun of the show from 1994. Like it helps me make it, imagine it to be a little bit more modern, because some of those shows are of the time for sure.
Yeah, but even the ones that even the ones that kind of have that lack of polish from when they were made, like I still just love that era of the show so much. Like Next Gen is just my favorite one. I love Next Gen, but I like all of them. Like I really do like all of the shows. The other thing that's so great about this show is that it's made by someone who has a ton of experience in this genre of animation. It's Mike McMahon, who was showrunner on Rick and Morty, co-creator of Solar Opposites. Now, as they just revealed, has a a new Comedy Central show that's being made right now, based on like an old game. What is it, Golden Axe?
Yeah, based on a Sega video game that I have. I have one of those games on my Sega Game Gear. It's awesome.
Right. He is. I mean, like, just an actual perfect dork. If he's if these are the things he's adapting, right? And so he was also a guy who had a really popular Twitter account called Next Gen Season 8, right? Or was it Season 8? So it was Next Gen ended at Season 7. He basically had a Twitter account where he was tweeting out comedic premises for what would happen in Next Generation Season 8.
That's pretty good.
This guy being the guy who's tabbed to make Star Trek Lower Decks the first comedy Star Trek show. Perfect choice. Like, truly couldn't be better.
Yep.
But that is I think what I love most about this show is that it does, like, I think some people can look at this show cynically and be like, oh, it's too Rick and Morty. But I think it actually takes the best parts of Rick and Morty and focus on those. And that is like, it's set in this crazy fun sci-fi world, but it's really like focusing on these characters and their relationships, and like this kind of little, it's kind of like a family sitcom, except it's both a family sitcom and a workplace sitcom, because they all work together, but they also all have to live together on this ship. So it's kind of got the combination there. And it also is just Star Trek.
And on the other side, before you hear any other haters, Tariq, before you hear any other shit talking about this show,
I feel like people have come around on this show as it's gone on. Yeah.
But there's always going to be the people who think that Star Trek isn't this silly, that it's like more serious than this, because some of these situations and scenarios are really like out there and really funny. But if you go back and watch, I mean, this show's name, Star Trek Lower Decks, there was an episode from Star Trek The Next Generation in either the late 80s or early 90s that aired that was called Lower Decks. And that whole episode was just about the people kind of not on the main crew, not the captain and the navigator and blah, 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 but all these other people working down in the lower decks of the ship and what their day-to-day life was. And Mike McMahon has said that's his favorite episode. And he so loved that perspective. And that's what he wanted the show to be. And also, there's great justifications for how silly this show is. Even the premise of this episode where they're creating like a movie in the holodeck, which is this Star Trek sci-fi concept where you can kind of do anything. Because there's been previous Star Trek shows and episodes and movies and stuff that have shown not only really silly and goofy stuff, going back to the 60s original show and the concept. One episode would be really serious and intense. Another episode would be really goofy and silly. So it had like wildly varying tones. But then like at the end of, for example, the show Star Trek Enterprise, which had 4 seasons of this TV show that ran on UPN from like 2000 to 2004. The last episode, they did this sort of fake out reveal where like...
We talked about this on the Mark episode.
Yes,
remember?
you did.
We were talking about the weird fake outs in finales of TV shows. Yeah.
So this show had the fake out where a character from Star Trek The Next Generation, William Riker, who was canonically like a couple of 100 years in the future from when this show was taking place, Enterprise, he like pauses the holodeck, and the reveal was that he was kind of watching the show you were watching as though it was like a hologram show for him. And he's like studying the historical records, he's like studying the historical tapes. So Mike McMahon has said that's a justification that people in the Star Trek universe watch Star Trek, that they know about the previous people that came before them. So that's why certain things have come from. My favorite bit is Star Trek fans in the real world have the little sort of shortened versions of each of the shows. Star Trek The Next Generation is TNG. Deep Space Nine is DS9. Oh, what's your favorite show? Oh, I like DS9. What's your favorite? Oh, I grew up on TNG. So then within Lower Decks, the character Boimler, the really nerdy overachiever, he starts talking about the era of history, and he goes, oh, TOS is my favorite era, which stands for Star Trek The Original Series. And somebody goes, TOS? What do you mean TOS? He goes, yeah, that's what I call this era. Those old scientists that were working in this TOS. And then they did a crossover, you guys, where the 2 lead characters from Lower Decks in live action, played by Jack Quaid.
I haven't seen that yet.
Played by Jack Quaid and Tawny Newsome, go into that era on Star Trek Strange New Worlds, with a younger Spock, and they're in the TOS, Those Old Scientists era, and that episode of Strange New Worlds is called Those Old Scientists. So it is
Amazing.
the most brilliant gift for Star Trek fans, and it was so funny. But it's still even that episode had to do with those characters and what they're going through, and so yeah, this whole thing has been a gift, not the least of. We get the gift of a nice shot, Da Vinci. Grazie. Ciao, Da Vinci. Ciao, Tandy. And then he comes in at the end because like Vindicta's like, I'll get my revenge. And he goes, not today. Not on Da Vinci's watch. After he like shoots her with a gun. It was so funny. And you think it's stupid, but previous Star Trek shows have had episodes where they've talked to like Leonardo da Vinci or like, a classic moment where they had a hologram version of Stephen Hawking, and it was the actual Stephen Hawking who cameoed in the show in the 90s. He came in and like, so they're like talking to Stephen Hawking through this hologram historical program. It's great, dude. So don't listen to any of the haters, Tariq. Start watching Star Trek Lower Decks. Start watching Star Trek the movies. Start watching Primal. Go back, watch the original series. Go back, watch the 80s show.
I got a lot of homework after this podcast.
Well, if you're going to try to watch all of Star Trek, that's a journey.
That's a podcast right there.
I will say, after while listening to y'all explain it to me, it did make me remember one other run-in that I had with Star Trek. I guess I've been running from this shit my whole life. I had for years, I don't think, I literally think I might have threw it out when I moved out of my mom's house. But I had it was like a box. It was unopened and it said like Star Trek the computer game or some shit. It was like it was based on the movie. It was based on the movie, the first movie or something. It was this huge fucking, I don't know who gave it to me. I don't know where it came from. I just know it was in the corner of my closet for years, and I think I threw it out like right before I moved.
Well, you should check.
I probably should have asked Johnny if he wanted it. Now that I think about it,
you probably should.
I think next week
I sent you like comic books when I moved.
I'm gonna have to do holodeck therapy about this.
Yeah, that's that's great. Yeah, stop running from it, Tariq. That's the lesson: is you got to turn around and embrace it. And I also picked an episode of this show that's like in season 1, but it's not the pilot episode. But I don't think it really because these characters go through a lot in these 4 seasons, and then it's going to be the 5th season this year of this show, Lower Decks,
and it's the last season, right?
Right, and characters and that's another reason I picked this episode too, is because I'm still pissed that they canceled it effectively, and it's going to end at 5 seasons. I think it could have gone for much longer because it's really quality, but the characters are like in different positions in the later seasons. Like things are different. But to see this early enough in there where you get to see the Mariner relationship with her mom, the Captain Freeman of the ship, but it's not a huge spoiler. But then there's the spoiler of, that up to this point, nobody else on the ship knows that they're mother and daughter. So that was a nice revelation to give you a little, okay. Because I think in the pilot episode,
I didn't realize that. that.
I think the viewers know. The viewers know their relationship, but not the other characters.
Yeah, I didn't
so now
realize,
you can.
I'd been watching it, but I didn't realize that was not known to everyone else. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
So again, great pick. You're welcome, guys. Enjoy your perfect entry point for Star Trek.
It was great.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
I have often talked about trying to force Tariq to watch some Star Trek, and he has also never seen Star Wars. Like, honestly, I almost feel like we should do a whole nother podcast that's just like making Tariq watch things that he has refused to watch.
I've been running
all right,
Tariq,
how do you feel about this?
Okay, so this was my, again, you got Tariq who loves like Family Guy and stuff. How could you not have pitched Lower Decks? That's going to be a great entry point to this world. How would you pitch Star Wars, Johnny? What would you have Tariq watch that's Star Wars?
Well, I think you just have to watch the original. Like, I don't know how. At
this point, at this point, I would like have to, because I've seen all 3 Family Guy Star Wars things.
So you know all.
But you haven't seen the movies that they're doing.
I've seen the.
Oh my God.
Phineas and Ferb did a Star Wars thing, which is like one of my favorite Phineas and Ferb things. That if I gotta watch the movies, somebody gotta watch the Star Wars Phineas and Ferb for me.
How do you? I was watching Rick and Morty, and they did the episode where they referenced Quados the whole episode, and that's from Total Recall, and I could not stand another minute of existence without having seen Total Recall. So it's like, I gotta watch Total Recall. How do you love Family Guy and just watch all the Blue Harvest specials, but you're like, I'm fine, I'll never need to see Star Wars? That's insane to me.
I think it's one of those things that like it is like, especially because of like the cartoons we grew up with, because they're all made by people that grew up with Star Wars.
Yeah.
So it's just like it's like they say that like you can take different clips from every Simpsons episode and put them together, and suddenly you have the entirety of The Godfather. It's like the same thing,
Right.
where like
Right.
just through osmosis, there's just so much. I know so much knowledge about Star Wars without having seen anything. I know like characters' names and everything.
Crazy.
But, yeah.
I know characters. I'm fine. I know the characters' names.
I know who Leia is. Sure, I'm good.
Searching databanks. Leia.
Yeah. It's like, which one do I know?
Who do I know?
Then my pitch would be to like Johnny says, watch the original Star Wars movie, A New Hope, but then immediately after you see that, rewatch the first Family Guy special.
Yeah,
because
sure.
because if only just to further appreciate the level of detail that they went into recreating that film.
That first one in particular is so great. That first Blue
Yes.
Harvest is so funny.
So, and then you do Empire Strikes Back, and then the Family Guy, and then Return of the Jedi, and then the Family Guy, and then from there do whatever you want. But that's
I'm just Free Willy after that.
Yeah.
I did see Force Awakens.
You saw that in
Okay.
theaters, right? Yeah.
I did.
Right.
Yeah,
Did you see it in 3D? Then you didn't see it, dude. Then you didn't see it, bro.
I don't think I did.
No, you did not. Because if you did, you would have been like, "Oh, I've seen every Star Wars thing now. I love it all."
Yeah, I have.
When you see the Millennium Falcon cruise out of that Star Destroyer and then go like that,
He doesn't even know what those things are.
oh my god!
Which one is
What's
that?
a Star
Is that the white
Destroyer?
one?
It's the thing. It kind of looks like this. It's a ship.
man.
What's the
Yeah,
one
it
that
does
looks
look
like
like
the
this.
what's the one that looks like the Dorito? It's like
The Star Destroyer.
Okay.
Yeah,
yeah.
The big Dorito that comes out.
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
This is like my
this does
favorite
need to
thing
be
to do. I do this.
where you refer
to
to
mess with
everything in
nerds?
it as your
To mess with
reference
nerds?
point. It's like
That's your favorite
like,
thing
when
to
they
do,
got
Tariq?
pulled in by the Dorito ship.
That's great.
I do that on when I do streams on my channel. My friends, they'll be like talking about like I never watched like Dragon Ball Z or anything like that either. So like they'll be explaining that, and they're like, yeah. This character died and then he came back as like a potato chip and then he did this. I'm like, what the fuck is this cartoon about? Like where are the dragons? Where the balls? I don't even understand what's going on. That's like my favorite thing to do.
The balls were the friendship they made along the way. That's what the balls are.
Oh, you know what? Okay.
I can't believe after listening to you complain, Tariq, about how the Joker movie did you dirty and drove you insane.
Yeah.
And now you sit there and you gleefully make fun of the names and the.
That's right. Yeah. Well, you know, hurt people.
Hurt people.
That's where that comes from.
Listen, Tariq, with great power comes great responsibility. So you got to reflect.
I know that one.
You have
That's
to-
Spider-Man.
Oh,
I know
that's
that
right. That's right. That is Spider-Man. With great ability comes great accountability. Okay, so you have to look within yourself and
Look
maybe
inward.
that's so funny to me is that I'm talking to a person whose entryway into Star Wars might be Family Guy. That's going to be the
It
first.
is.
It is.
I don't even know if it might be. I think you can. I was like Fairly Odd
great.
Parents or something when I was like 5. But
Yeah.
I'll probably
Exactly.
When I was
Yeah.
younger, I used to watch. There was a Muppet Babies Star Wars special. that I
Whoa!
watched
What?
all the
It was
time.
really good.
Yeah.
It was really good.
Yeah.
They did an Indiana Jones parody. That show was like a big
Mm-hmm.
pop culture show before.
I don't know how did they.
Yeah.
How did they do that? I guess just Henson. Henson was just homies with everyone. So they're like, yeah,
I
sure.
get, yeah. Jim Henson was like a capybara in Hollywood. Everyone loved him, got along with him, could chill with him. Yeah, I think that's what it is.
man.
I think that's what it is.
Wow,
Cool.
Hector. This is a great episode. This was great.
What an episode,
This
man!
was so good. Yeah, we gotta have you on again in the future. Bring us some more stuff.
Okay.
We're going through a bunch of guests, and then eventually we're gonna be like, all right, who are all the best ones?
Sure.
We're getting them back
Sure.
in here.
Yeah, get over.
Great.
This was great, dude. Thank you for coming on. Do you
Yes, yeah.
have anything else you want to say or plug or anything you want to say to us before we go?
You know what?
On the
Maybe
record.
the best Star Since The Last Jedi, but maybe even better and since like the original movies, Star Wars Visions. If y'all
Oh
haven't seen
yes,
that.
I have.
Verse.
I've only watched a couple of them. Yeah,
Star
yeah.
Wars Visions. Season 1 is mostly Asian animation houses. Season 2, they went more international, and they have animators from Africa and from Ireland and from all over the place. Is some of the best animation you'll see, some of the best Star Wars storytelling you'll see. Yeah, I can't praise that enough. So maybe that's the entry point. But please keep watching Primal, keep watching Star Trek Lower Decks. Thanks for having me on, guys. This was a blast.
Yeah. And go check
Yeah,
out
man.
Hector and Heroes Reforged, which is like, that seems like you guys are doing great over there. I mean, you guys are just like plugging away. It's a lot of reaction content, all the nerdy stuff. They do Star Wars, they do Marvel, they do trailers. It's great. Adam and Augustine over there. Shout out to those guys.
Thanks.
They're great also. Yeah. All right. Great.
Man.
Tariq, you got any plugs? This comes out in like a few weeks, so it's like, I don't know if our immediate plugs matter.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I got some videos up.
Yeah,
you
go watch
you
the
go look
videos.
over there. The weekly Monday streams to help raise funds for my pilot happen every Monday, 8 p.m. EST. And the You Laugh channel over on YouTube with me and Hats Off Media, where we play licensed games based on cartoons, also to raise funds for the cartoon. But you don't got to send no money. Just watch the videos. That's all.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Also, just send Tariq money for his pilot. It's really good. I got to watch the animatic. No, it's not going to spoil, but the big spoiler is it's great. So
Yeah, Johnny gave me some really, really great notes. I
wasn't just all praise. I had constructive notes.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not just going to be a great friend and say, this is perfect. You're perfect. I gave you good notes, Tariq.
I was really happy that I have friends that did that for me. Cause I even on the little thing on the form, I wrote, please be honest. It won't hurt my feelings. Not that much, but you know.
Great. What else do we have to plug? Listen to our we're in this new format. We're like a month in at this point. Please go listen to these previous episodes. I'm really happy with how they're turning out so far. We've had some really good ones. We got some really good people coming up. We haven't said this in years, but rate, review, and subscribe on all the podcast apps, because that's important for us getting plugged back in the algorithm. We've been gone so long. Our numbers are a little lower on the podcast platforms, and it's just because we haven't been around for a while. But they raise every week. Hopefully, we keep going with that. If you like our stuff a lot, check out our Patreon for $5 a month. We've got like 40 extra episodes on there, mostly talking about movies. There's probably a plug for it before this episode, so you know the drill.
Let me tell you right now, guys, that's the extra bonus Patreon content. Is Johnny, you have to make Tariq watch a Star Wars.
I was thinking about it.
A Star Trek episode, and that's your Patreon. And then it's just an hour of Tariq being like, man, that sucked. I did not like that. That's great. Yeah. He's going to be the geography was all wrong. That's not how it works.
That was kind of like when Mikey co-hosts all those episodes, and we were really excited to do the Wes Anderson stop motion ones. And Tariq was kind of like, it was fine.
And you're like, you didn't adore Isle of Dogs? And Tariq's like, it's whatever.
Fantastic Mr. Fox is a masterpiece. And he was like, I think I liked it.
Yeah.
Every time that happens, I like come into the Zimcaster call with my tail between my legs. I'm gonna ruin this podcast.
It's fun. I love Fantastic Mr. Fox too. Like, I think those movies they're fantastic. They're amazing. They're also some of the whitest films ever made. The Wes Anderson movies are
even though it's
white.
just all animals.
And they're all animals in Japan, and it's still like a pretty white movie. It's just Bill Murray. Like, oh, okay, great.
Tariq also just hadn't really seen any other Wes Anderson movies, so he was there is definitely a cadence and rhythm to his style that you have to become accustomed to. I do think that I do feel like if you watch more of his movies and some of his other stuff, you go back to it and be
then I go back. I was thinking
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the Asteroid City? I like that one.
I liked Asteroid City. It's I
almost saw that.
It felt like a little
almost. I thought about it. I did watch something else.
We were gonna see it for my roommate's birthday, but then he picked something else. I don't remember what he picked, but it was something else.
It's visually one of the most beautiful movies I've ever seen. They make that thing look like
Very
those
cool.
old timey postcards. It's unbelievable.
I got
I
that from the
really
trailer,
liked it.
yeah.
I thought it was maybe a little too ambitious for its own good, but it was still like, I'm just like glad he tried to do that kind of thing. But that's how I feel about his, like, I just want him to keep doing his thing. Anyone who's just like, oh, it's too Wes Anderson-y, I'm like, go watch any other movie then. Like, just don't watch his movies then.
Yeah, what you watching him for if it's too much like him? Yeah, I get you.
Oh man, are you mad that a Marvel movie had them fighting and they're in costumes
Yeah.
and they're
Yeah.
like, what do you?
There was
what do you
too many
think's gonna happen?
superheroes in this Marvel
Yeah,
movie.
man. What did you? Oh, they overcame evil, and that's unrealistic to you. What do you want? What are you doing? What are you doing? You gotta know what you sign up for. So,
All right, this is great episode. Cool, Hector, we gotta have you back on, and we gotta hang out.
Yeah.
We gotta hang out soon. Let me bring you. I can bring you your Blu-rays today if you want. Hector is
sure, I'll be
like
home.
less than a mile away from me right now. We
Yeah.
live very close to each
What?
other.
Yep. I can hear him recording right now. It's like an echo. I hadn't said anything this whole time, but I can hear him down there. So.
Man. All right, well, let's close it out. Here's my ending spiel. I say, and
Let's hear
with that, I want to thank Carrie Feek for our artwork. I want to thank Jake Neutron for our theme song. I want to thank Michael Yunez for producing and editing the podcast. I want to thank Hector Tariq for co-hosting every episode with me and being a good friend. I want to thank Hector Navarro for being our guest this week, bringing us 3 great episodes, also being a good friend. I want to thank everyone who listens, all of the people on our Patreon, the cursed ones. We want to thank all of you. You guys are great. We really appreciate you. We couldn't do it without you. We love you a lot. But also, in addition to that, thank you very much. So long.